Business of Drag and Me with your host, the wonderful Braden. We'll talk about taxes, we'll talk about business, we'll talk about life. Spill the tea. See you there. Ow, whoa.
Alrighty, well, welcome, friends, to the podcast. I'm very excited because this is actually my first interview on this new show. So, Leeja, are you excited? Am I pronouncing your name right, first of all?
Yeah, nailing it.
Okay.
You got it.
I probably should have got like a great bio from you to get started to like introduce you properly to my audience. But you are an attorney. You live in Minnesota. You have, what now, 2 YouTube channels. So that's fabulous. And you're killing it with content over there. Do you want to kind of take it from there and tell the lovely people a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I graduated from law school 2020 into a pandemic, started at a giant firm that like didn't fulfill me in any way. And so I started this YouTube channel to try to feel like I had any sort of voice or like getting legal knowledge out to the people as opposed to in these very kind of institutionalized silos. And so, yeah, I started a YouTube channel in August 2020. And just I share any sort of legal information related to current events and pop culture. And recently I've started getting into like kooky history and like weird stories from the past that are law related. That's been really fun. So that's what I'm doing on my legal YouTube channel. And then I do a drag race reaction podcast video on my other YouTube channel. And then I'm also growing over on TikTok, doing kind of like bite-size legal things as well. I just hit 100,000 subscribers or followers or whatever they're called over there recently. So yeah, just like a content creation machine all day long, just law. And then I also do part-time family law and divorce law work as an actual lawyer. Okay,
cool. Well, we probably aren't going to talk a ton about family law on this podcast episode. I hope that's okay. So what we're going to be talking about, the lovely and amazing Bussy Queen did a video. I don't know how long ago this was at this point, but it was titled Exposing the RuPaul's Drag Race Contract. And then you did a reaction video to that video. And now we're doing a reaction podcast video to your reaction video. Not really, but kind of.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it in the introduction of your video where you said contract interpretation is super boring. I'm just summarizing your quote.
Yes.
So my hope is that this lawyer to lawyer discussion will maybe make it a little bit more fun because, I mean, we have a gay, a bisexual, and 53 pages of legal minutia. So what could be more fun than that, right?
To me, I don't know.
Yeah, sounds pretty good to me. Okay, so what were you, just to kind of like kick this party off, what were your initial thoughts? Did you like look at the contract first? Or did you watch the video? And then I'm also curious, did you like watch the video start to finish, or are you doing the reaction like live while you're watching it the first time?
For that one, I was doing the reaction live as I was watching it for the first time. So I had not seen the contract. And so I was kind of going off of the sections that Bussy was highlighting and going from there based on kind of general legal knowledge about how contracts work.
Yeah. And what were your initial thoughts as you were watching this? Were you like, this feels correct, or this is like really, really fucking wild?
Well, some of it, seems absurd, but is traditional contract language, like the whole language around rights extending to the entire universe. As absurd as that sounds, it is commonly in contract language. So from the outside reading this contract, I think it is easy to kind of sensationalize some of these terms. But then there were things that surprised me in terms of, and I'm sure these probably are more common in reality TV show contracts. Those are unfortunately notoriously hard to get your hands on. I've tried. But the provisions where like we get to film you even is where you have an expectation of privacy and we get to use anything that we film or record forever. That seemed, I was surprised by that. But I would also assume it's probably pretty standard, especially for reality TV.
Yeah, like Bussy noted, I think she shared a tweet from another drag queen that basically confirmed that they leave their mics on while they go to the bathroom. And I'm like,
yes. Why?
Okay,
What are they,
great.
what are they
Maybe
going to use that for?
Yeah, maybe that's just a matter of convenience because it's like a big hassle to take them on and off. I don't know. Okay, so what I was thinking we would do is obviously we're not going to review this entire document. We're not going to go through every page, but kind of just talking about the sections that were noted in both of the videos. I highlighted a couple of other ones as well. Some of them I'll just kind of summarize, but others I figured we do kind of like a read along. So like read a little bit, explain it, talk about it. And if the reading gets too boring, I'll, just edit some of that out. So it won't be, like too bad. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. So the first thing that was really noted was section 1, development, production of operations. They talk about the whole 5 additional exclusive irrevocable options to bring people onto additional cycles. And this is something, I know that you're newer into like I'm calling it the drag race universe based on what I've heard you say on your videos. I binge watched season 2 and season 3, like on Hulu when I was in college. And then season 4 was the first season I watched like all the way through and have been like kind of a super fan since. So I've heard these murmurs like before this contract came out that people are essentially required to go back to All Stars if they're asked. So that wasn't new to me, but the 5 cycle things, we'll talk about the practicality of this, but the 5 cycle things was kind of wild, I thought.
Yeah, the 5 cycles, a year ago when I initially made this video, and that's when Bussy put out her videos about a year ago, a little more than, I had no drag race knowledge. I called the show RuPaul's over and over in the video, and a lot of people laughed at me for that, like for good reason. But now having a year of kind of diving deep into it, on rereading this contract now, those 5 additional options, I did wonder because now with All Stars 7, I heard rumors of other queens having turned this down, like Trixie Mattel is too busy to be on All Stars, and so I did wonder with this section how much they actually are really going to enforce it, because that's kind of a bad look if they're like, well, we asked Trixie to be on, we were rejected, so now we're going to sue her. That's not a great look.
Yeah, so like I had a couple of thoughts. So I call this, when I draft contracts like for my clients, I have provisions that I call them heads up provisions, for lack of a better term. And to my clients, I'm basically like, this is something that I think we can feel comfortable putting in the contract, but the reality is like you're never going to enforce it. You're just basically telling the person signing it, like, I really, really want you to agree with this. And if you don't like end up abiding by it, I might not sue you, but like, we're not going to be on, we may not be on great terms depending on the circumstance.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a reality of how contract enforcement actually works that kind of gets lost when you start reading these terms and you think anytime any tiny little infraction of these terms happens, then a lawsuit is going to result. But that's just not practical from like a business standpoint or a business relationships standpoint. So I think, while reading these terms, also taking kind of a grain of salt and understanding that there's also kind of the external image that they have to be thinking about and the cost of bringing a lawsuit over minor infractions and all these other things that go into a business's decision to sue beyond just the contract.
Yeah, super costly. And also I was thinking, and it's been a while since my law school remedies class, so a lot of this is like a little more gray in my mind. Might be fresher for you. But I was thinking if they sued for this particular provision, like we demanded that you come on the show, you didn't do it, they would have to sue for specific performance, right? Which is like a legal remedy where you're forcing someone to do something, and courts are generally very, very hesitant to like award that. Instead, they would, you would need to sue for what is the financial harm for this person not agreeing to come on the show, which I don't know, just seems like something that would never happen.
Right. And how do you calculate that? But yeah, as to the whole specific performance, especially with employment contracts, though this wouldn't technically be one because they're not employees, but with we have the 13th Amendment, which prohibits slavery and also forced servitude. And so you run into like constitutional questions when you try to force someone to work. We really don't like that generally in this country. So yeah, I think it would have to result in some sort of monetary lawsuit. And then, how do you calculate their losses by having to pick someone else who isn't Trixie Mattel to be on All-Star 7, for example?
Yeah, it gets a little wild. Okay, I don't want to, I feel like, I was like, you brought up con law, like constitutional law, and I started sweating for a second because it was like my like very worst class.
Oh, really?
Interesting, because I was a poli-sci major in undergrad, right?
Oh, funny.
This is why I ended up going into tax law, because I didn't want to read 80-page court opinions. It turns out was fair. Like my vibe. Okay, if anyone's listening to this podcast episode, they might also be thinking like, kind of, what's the idea? What's the purpose behind this, right? So I think, would you agree that your channel is more entertainment focused, right?
My law channel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's definitely education. Edutainment is the term.
Edutainment. I like that. Yeah. So it's so it's educational and it's entertainment. I'm just contrasting that with like the idea with this show is, I mean, if a ton of people end up listening to it because it's entertaining and educational, that would be fantastic. But the audience we're speaking to, or I'm hoping to speak to, is like the queens directly. So if you potentially are listening to this and you want to go on the show, like, what are you agreeing to? And I realize it's kind of a narrow audience. But that's kind of like the why behind these. I have some like drag race queens that are going to come on and talk about it as much as they can in terms of the NDA, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Okay, so we talked about the whole additional cycles thing. I think that's kind of interesting. Next, there's this whole thing about the copyright with regard to obviously what you're creating on the show, but what you're creating before the show. And because I know that you have worked in copyright, you have a little bit of background in IP. Can you briefly explain to everyone, first of all, it never hurts to explain the difference between a trademark and a copyright, but then more specifically how copyright actually works?
Yeah, I realized I forgot to include that in my little intro bio. The law firm that I worked at before kind of going solo on YouTube and doing family law, I did intellectual property work. So they do have a little background knowledge there. So a trademark versus a copyright. A trademark is something that a business is going to use and put on a product that identifies the source of that product. So if you buy a shoe and it's got the Nike swoop on it, you know where it's coming from and you have a certain expectation of the quality of that product. That's the purpose of a trademark. It's really for consumer protection because Nike has a protection over that mark. So no other business can go and slap a Nike mark on some random shoe and consumers would then be hurt thinking they're buying a Nike when they're not. So trademarks are slogans, brand names, that kind of thing. Copyrights are creative works, and they are meant to protect the creator, the author. So that's going to be music, any photography, any kind of art. It spans kind of a wide range. Anything written that's longer than like a short phrase. Short phrases are going to be in trademarks. Longer sentences, poetry, etc., is going to be in copyrights. And copyrights, with a trademark, you have to register your trademark. There's a whole process with that. Copyrights, they are created the second that you make something. So if you take a photo of something, it becomes your copyrighted work immediately when you take it. Even if there's a million, like if you go stand in front of the Eiffel Tower, there's a million photos of the Eiffel Tower. But if you take a photo that looks like every other photo, but you took it, you own the copyright in that photo. So you own the copyright. You can register it with the federal government. That helps if you're going to like sue someone for copyright infringement. But generally speaking, the rights are there the second that you make something with copyrights, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm a fan of registering copyrights as well. A lot of people, you know, they just don't do it. But what I tell a lot of my clients is that you're the biggest kind of impact you can have with a copyright is telling someone, hey, I registered my copyright. So if you don't cease encroaching on it, like I'm going to sue you and then you'll have to pay my attorney fees because your damages might not be that high, but your attorney fees could be. And registering the copyright, you know, helps with that, which is great. Okay.
Right.
So copyright, my understanding is that copyright also comes with, like, they call it a bundle of rights, right? So there's like copyright rights is really like a categorical term. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
So there's and I like, you know, had to Google these real quick. So I had them handy. There's the right to reproduce the work, display, perform the work, distribute the work, and then something that they call creative derivative works. So I'm gonna like put you on the hot seat, and we'll give the example is like the audition tape that these queens have to create to send into RuPaul's Drag Race. What would creating derivative works of that look like? Just to give one example.
So if you take your audition tape and even if you just put it on YouTube, that could potentially count as a derivative work. Or if you set it to music or make like a remix of it, or use a clip from it, or take screenshots of it and put it on a website, or if they were to take it on the show and put it as a snippet in part of RuPaul's Drag Race, an episode of it, that would be a derivative work.
And then reproduce, I feel like that one's pretty obvious. Display or perform. That one might be a little bit harder to come up with examples. But the point is there's all these rights, right? And in contracts, we can sign away like one of them, multiple of them. But I think I'd have to go back and read the exact provision. But I think we can assume that under this contract, they're signing away the whole collection, the whole bundle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're giving full ownership of it over to, I think, World of Wonder specifically.
Yeah. One of the things that came up, I think you noted this, but Bussy definitely did, like kind of raising the question of, particularly with the things that you're creating to submit your application to the show, whether it's worth giving up those rights to get on the show. And for me, I was thinking, for me, it's like an obvious yes, because my thought process was, well, your audition tape doesn't really have any value if you don't get on the show anyway, unless there's, like you end up making it huge on your own and somehow monetize, like, here's the audition tape I created for Drag Race, although I never got on. The likelihood of that being a reality is pretty slim. So it's like super valuable if you do get on, but it's like not valuable at all if you don't get on. So what's the harm in signing it away? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I talked about that in my video as well. It's kind of a catch-22, probably not. Is that the right word? Anyway, it's definitely if you don't give it up, then you are jeopardizing your potential to be on this show, which has, for better or for worse, a bit of a monopoly on becoming a famous drag queen. Obviously, there are examples of queens who have made it without the show, but like there's a real proliferation of queens these days, and getting on Drag Race is definitely a more surefire way of kind of getting your career off the ground. And so, if you don't give up those rights to get on the show, to get your career off the ground, then the value in your copyrights of the video are none. So,
right. Yeah. I think it's all the stuff that you're doing post Drag Race. That's where things start to get a little hairy and wild. So let's talk about that. The next section, and this contract, is participation. Now, we could go through this in detail. If there's any specific paragraphs you think are like interesting to chat about, we can. But a lot of this, and you and Bussy both noted it in your videos, I think are pretty standard for us to expect for a reality TV show, right? Like if you're going on reality TV, they're gonna want to have you mic'd and like on video, basically 24/7. Like you don't have a lot of like privacy. That just kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, I did note that there's one paragraph labeled access, paragraph B, where they grant assignee the right to videotape, film, portray, photograph, and otherwise record me, my actions, and my voice, and other sound effects. Don't know what that means. Okay. On an up to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week basis in the course of my actual life, whether by requesting me to wear a microphone or not, subject to the production protocols. My issue, I guess, with this paragraph is that there is really no time limitation to it. And I assume you can extrapolate from the rest of the contract that it would probably be only during the production time, but it doesn't say that. And so it's kind of just granting this all out free-for-all to your life. And then in the next paragraph, it says, I hereby grant producer the right to enter and occupy such locations where I will be present in the course of my life for the purpose of capturing portions of material. So it's like, if I have control over the location, I have to let the producer come in and film at their discretion. So again, like you said, I think these are probably pretty common for a reality show. It makes sense that they would need those permissions to do their work, but it is interesting as an outsider to read that.
Yeah, well, that's a good point though, because so here's the thing is me reading this, if it was, okay, so it's access under participation. So there's participation, and then they have a section for pre-production and then a section for production. And as if this were like a sub-bullet under production, then we could assume that they meant to like define it during that period of time. But I feel like I would argue that that's what they intended to do. They just didn't draft it correctly. That's how I don't know.
That makes sense.
But we have this whole concept, and I think you noted this in your video as well, that when things are ambiguous in a contract, that we what's the legal terminology they say that it's held against the drafter? I'm missing the exact rule I had memorized at one point in time, but basically you could say, well, they just didn't draft it real good, so like that's a them problem, not a me problem, and we gotta work our way around this. Is how I would put that in layman's terms.
Yeah.
So in this section, the one I wanted to actually read through is exclusivity. So G. Do you have the contract in front of you?
I do.
Okay, so little g, it says, I agree from the effective date of this agreement and until 12 months after the initial broadcast of the last episode of the program in which I appear, this is called the exclusivity period, that my appearance and participation will be exclusive to producer and all media. So timeline. Let's talk timeline first. They say 12 months after the initial broadcast of the last episode. So if you're recording this, summer last year, last episode comes out April 30th on VH1, then it's 1 year from April 30th of this year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Literally everyone, when you're reading contracts, it helps to read them with a friend, just so you can be like, did we read that sentence correctly?
Is that what that means in real English? Yeah.
Yeah, in real English. All right. So that is our exclusivity period. And so it says here under, it will be exclusive to producer, so it's the production company, and all media, except that I shall be allowed to make or appear in any live performances and personal appearances, which they're going to define as live performances, provided that I do not publicize, advertise, mention, or promote my appearance in the program in connection with such live performances. So we're going to stop there. This part to me seemed very vague. I thought maybe you would have a better idea of what they meant by that.
Right. But what I was picturing this to be for is to allow the queens to continue to do performances, one-off performances, gigs, whatever, as long as they don't bring up like, hey, I'm going to be on the new season of Drag Race or something, because I think they want to have tight control over the publicity side of things, but they don't want to necessarily bar the queens from doing any performances at all during the course of the exclusivity period.
That's what I thought as well. But like, since the confusing part to me was this paragraph is for up to 1 year after the show airs. So then it's like, can you not book a live performance and then promote yourself as a contestant on the show after the show airs? Because that's like what the term says, which really doesn't even make any sense from a practical perspective from the production company wanting them to probably promote the show. So
yeah,
I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I would also argue that's like a little bit of a drafting issue. I don't know.
I think that makes perfect sense. I think your interpretation makes sense based on what it says. It doesn't make sense that they would have drafted it that way but again, I think that they really do want strict control over the publicity of Drag Race, especially there are some more provisions further down that I'm sure we'll get to that they kind of seem to want some tight control.
Yeah, I think what they're going for is they don't want you like, I don't know, like they don't want you like producing a show that it's like, Drag Race Rewind, where you're like using their name in the show and promoting the fact that you were on the show. I don't know. That's getting real wishy-washy, but I think that's like the intent behind it. Okay, so I'm skipping down a little bit. Starting at in consideration of the foregoing, And subject to producer's request, participants shall receive payment in the amount of $1,000 per show. So I think I skipped a little bit, but this is basically saying if they're required to be in shows, they're, I think, at the producer's request. That's confusing. They'll be paid $1,000. They'll be paid $1,000. When I was watching Bussy's video, he was making it sound like it was saying at producer's discretion they would pay them $1,000. But producer's request, I don't really know what that, like they're requesting them to do a production, and then if they agree, they'll pay them $1,000.
Yeah, that's kind of weirdly drafted. In consideration of the foregoing and sub-producer's request, participants shall receive payment in the amount of $1,000. Producer's request of what? That they perform, or that the producer requests that they get money? What is the producer requesting in this sentence?
Yeah, so this would be a circumstance where if I'm going to sign this contract, I want to know, are you requesting me to do this? And then if I say yes, you're going to pay me. Or are you requesting that like whoever you're entering the agreement with to have me perform is going to pay you, in which case you'll pay me, because those are two very, very different things. Okay. There's a lot more in this paragraph. I don't think we need to read the rest of it. What do you think? Okay. So another thing I was thinking about is this also requires participation at DragCon. So that's under I. I'm assuming you've not been to DragCon yet.
Not yet.
Hello, DragCon!
Okay, if you go next year, can we hang out?
Yes, that would be great.
I think that'll be fun. I went last month, like before I had announced this new business to anyone, and I got super like slapdash, that's the expression, business cards made through Moo, and shamelessly just paid for a lot of meet and greets to hand out business cards.
Oh, smart.
And half the queens were like, "This is genius," and the other half were like, "Who are you and why are you giving this to me?" Which, fair on their part. Yeah, like they're getting paid to take pictures of the people all day. But it was very fun. So yes, you should go and
sounds great.
Out next year.
Absolutely.
So essentially this contract requires them to attend DragCon, which, not that surprising. What I really want to do, so I'm super interested in the finances of it all. So I've emailed a couple of queens that I met at DragCon, and I am trying to get them booked on the show to talk about how much they actually spend on their booth, on all their merch, what their markup on their merch is, and what their anticipated profit is. Whether they'll want to share all those numbers, I don't know, but I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely.
It's just kind of wild to me that they're getting paid. What does it say that they're getting paid? $1,000 for a US-based queen, or for US-based DragCon. And so then if they go to UK DragCon, they get $3,000, which it doesn't say in here that they're going to pay for their hotel or flight or anything.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you saw some of the booths these drag queens have, it's wild. Do you know Simone from season 13? Are you familiar with her?
Yes.
Okay. So she was the winner, and her booth was probably the coolest. It was like a giant white wall, and it said Simoma on it. And then you couldn't see her because she was like on the other side of the wall. So like you had to do the meet and greet. But it was Simoma. Yeah, it was called Simoma. And then she had like all of her like favorite looks like inside the Simoma
that's
museum,
cool.
like when you got the look. But I can only imagine, like I'm sure she had to hire someone to set all that shit up. So
absolutely.
Spending, I would guess that some of them just have like a table and some merch, and they're probably spending $1,000, but I would assume some probably spend up to like $10K to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't like, even if you sell merch, it doesn't seem like a money-making situation.
Yeah, you're hoping, I feel like it's one of those things where you're hoping to really capitalize off growing your fan base while you're there, I would assume. Okay, I could talk about DragCon all day. Such a good time. But let's chat about management options. I'm going to have to control find this paragraph because I did not put in my notes which paragraph it was. There it is. It's M, paragraph little m.
Yep.
So, okay. This says, I hereby grant to producer the exclusive option to serve as my exclusive manager pursuant to an agreement to be negotiated in good faith between producer and me in accordance with industry standard. And Leeja, where do we want to start with this sentence?
Exclusive option to serve as my exclusive manager.
Tell me about that.
So the way I interpret that is exclusive option to me means that it's like we're the only ones that you could even consider working with as a manager. But we have the option whether or not to take you, but you don't have the option to seek any other management out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what I would normally expect here, and again, I think it's fair to say that neither one of us have extensive background in entertainment law. So this is kind of a different area in and of itself. But what I, as someone on the outskirts of this industry up until now would expect is like a right of first refusal language, which is very different from what you just explained.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's basically saying like, essentially they're saying we have to be your manager. And if you don't like the terms, you don't get to have a manager is the way it's drafted.
Right. And then there's another sentence a little bit further down. I agree not to engage with a third-party manager without producer's prior written consent, which consent shall in no event be given by producer prior to the premiere of the last episode of the initial cycle in which I appear. So they are the only ones that can be your manager unless you ask permission, but you can't ask permission until after your last episode at all. They're just not going to give it. So yeah, they're just in complete control of who your manager is.
So a little inside scoop for you. This isn't like super inside scoop. It's like pretty public knowledge. But when you go to DragCon, it's like pretty evident. All of the season 14 queens, and that was the most recent season before DragCon, right? That was like the finale. Yeah, the finale had already aired. They're all represented by Boss Events, which is a management company that I don't think is owned by WoW. I think they probably just have some kind of relationship. The details of that relationship I would love to hear about. I would love to interview someone about that. It'd be fascinating. But Boss represented everyone, I think, except for Cornbread. I want to say there may have been one other queen who wasn't represented by them, but they all had their own area at DragCon, and you had to buy merch like at a Boss table in order to do a meet and greet with them. So it's kind of nice from the perspective of it was all organized. But as I'm reading this contract, I'm like, there's gotta be, and again, I'm saying probably, I don't know, but there's gotta be some type of like kickback or really, really close, affiliate relationship between the production company and this management company, I would think.
Right. Yeah. Because I do wonder the capacity that like World of Wonder or whatever has in kind of the management world, or if they do kind of outsource that. And I would be interested as well to see that agreement. Like, how are they getting compensated for this? Is there like a percentage breakdown happening?
And I've heard a little bit behind the scenes, and I won't say not with regard to Voss, but with regard to queens from past seasons, about a little bit of detail into what the percentages look like with management companies and how much they stand to gain out of these contracts coming out of Drag Race. These are details that I really want to bring to this podcast because the show is called The Business of Drag. I want to talk about the nitty-gritty details. So everyone stay tuned on whether I'll be able to get these guests and this information. But, if you subscribe, click the bell. What's all the other bullshit I'm supposed to say Leeja? You might get that coming up. You have to show me the ropes.
Thumbs up, subscribe, notification bell. If you're listening in podcast form, write a review.
Write a review. I always tell people on my other show, like, whether your review is positive or negative, please write one, because even the hateful reviews are going to get me noticed. I appreciate all of it.
That's right.
Okay. So we talked about the granting of rights. There's a lot in here about granting your like public persona and right of publicity. And I thought it'd be fun to mention that. Leeja, did you have to read the Vanna White case when you were in law school?
That sounds really familiar. Remind me what it is.
So I brought this up because it's like a really fun tie-in to the most recent season while we're recording this, because they just did a Vanna White runway, right? So there was a Vanna White case, and I'm gonna just give everyone the brief bio. So first of all, this deals with the right of publicity. I'm stealing this definition from LexisNexis, which prevents the unauthorized commercial use of an individual's name, likeness, or other recognizable aspects of one's persona, specifically for commercial promotion. So key term, commercial promotion, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be like me using Leeja's face to like sell my services. Mm-hmm. You could sue me if you want to, but I would talk to you ahead of time, right?
Yes.
Iron out an agreement. So Vanna White sued Samsung. This was in the case was in 1993. This was a minute ago. But the long story short of it was that Samsung, I think they had a commercial where there was a robot in like a Vanna White style gown, wig, and jewelry. Mm-hmm. And it said, like something AD. It was like the commercial was set a long time in the future, and the joke was like even when Vanna White's not here, like Wheel of Fortune still will be, and a Vanna White robot will be like doing the Vanna White thing. And she sued for using her name or likeness. Initially lost, appealed, and then the court actually overturned and sided with Vanna White, saying that that was a right of publicity. So I don't know how fun that story is for everyone else listening, but fun little Drag Race tie-in, and kind of explains what the right of publicity is, I think, to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that also brings up, I don't know if it's related here, but the idea that the right of publicity doesn't have to explicitly have a person's face. It can kind of just hint at the person, and they could still, that's probably why she lost in the first go around, but then like was able to convince it that it's like, no, people understood this to be me. So you can't do that.
Yeah, when I was first looking at it, I was thinking, because again, like this isn't my core area of expertise. I was like, how does this differ from the rules around parody? Like Weird Al gets away with doing all of his stuff. But I think it's different because you're doing your own parody to make like your own form of art, right? And you're copywriting that versus trying to use someone's persona to sell your stuff. Right. Which actually makes me always think about like when you see Facebook ads with like popular GIFs in them, like does that break this rule of publicity? Something I'd be interested in. Right. I don't want to research more, but if anyone else wants to, sends me the details, let me know. Maybe I'll hire a law school intern to do that for me.
Brilliant.
Okay, so our Vanna White story kind of goes into this next section, which was subsection 4, grant of rights. And then it was little letter J, which I'm just calling, it doesn't have a title, but I'm going to call it the TPM use. So in lieu of maybe me not reading all of this, Leeja, do you think you could just summarize what's going on here?
Yeah, so this is, again, a use of a likeness. I feel like as I was re-reviewing this contract, there's a million use of likeness provisions in here. But this, Bussy highlighted this in his video as well, but it gives the producer an irrevocable and perpetual right and license throughout the universe in any and all media, now known or hereafter devised in any language, to use the person's likeness as embodied in the material, meaning like what's been recorded, but also like all the other stuff that they make as kind of part of the production. So, the weird RuPaul's Drag Race, like iPhone apps that you can buy and like dress up queens, and anything that RuPaul decides he wants to expand his universe into, basically they right to kind of pop your face on it as well.
I was thinking, it even says it down here, examples given clothing and furniture, but I was thinking t-shirts, any kind of merch, like those, do they call them plushies? Those like little, you can see I'm not a big merch collector, but yeah, you get the point. The one thing, I mean, I was really wondering, like, does this only pertain to like stuff you do on the show, or does it also pertain to stuff you do like after you get off the show? Because it's a big difference. I know Bussy mentioned, and I thought this part was pretty wild, on All Stars 2, which, Leeja, you got to go back and watch All Stars 2. It's widely considered to be like the best season by a lot of fans. That was the All Star season that Ekaterina Zamolashkova was on.
I saw that one.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes.
So fun fact for everyone, I actually was a Slavic language and literature major in undergrad, so I have a special place in my heart for Katya. But she did, for her commercial, she did Katya's Crisis Control.
Hello, my name is Katya Zamlochkova. You know, these days, being a woman is tough. When I'm not struggling with my weight or worried about wrinkles, I am bombarded by a cacophony of demonic voices in my head telling me...
And Bussy mentioned that, like, WoW sold that merch at DragCon and that Katya could not because it was made on the show. So I'm assuming that's like what this paragraph is really getting to or attempting to get to.
Yes. And there's definitely, I think, somewhere else in this contract that I remembered seeing while I was re-reviewing it, that anything that it specifically says anything created during the show is exclusively owned by World of Wonder. So any of the songs that they make where they're recording their own vocals, I guess that would then extend to the products that they're inventing and some of the, like, anything they make, they have absolutely no rights to. And it explicitly says, like, you have no right to compensation for it either.
Including Alaska's tucking tape, which comes in the beautiful colors of, what was it? Stunning, something, and yellow. Stunning, fierce, and yellow.
In a world of oppression, I speak my mind. That's why I use Alaska Thunderfun fashion tape. What makes this product different, you might ask? That's a stupid question.
That's right.
In Alyssa's tongue poppers, I think it was. Good times. Okay. All right. So we have cycle rights amount. I noted that one was essentially the part specifying they get paid $500 per episode, which, like, yikes when we want to talk about the cost, the cost that goes into Drag Race. And again, not contract related, but I am still kind of shocked that they don't give them, I mean, maybe they do and we just haven't heard about it, but they don't give them like an allocated budget, like, for wardrobe to a certain degree.
Yeah. And I feel like I had heard something about there being a limit on, like, luggage that they can bring onto the show. So maybe that's kind of the quasi way that they're doing that. But I also heard that maybe it isn't applying in All Stars 7 because of, like, the number of just trains that we've seen alone seems to...
From Trinity to the train.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've heard the same thing too. They get, like, a certain number, and there was even, and again, this is just all stuff I've, like, learned secondhand from other YouTube videos. I think it's the same for you. But there was, like, drama in the past because they said the local LA queens would bring, like, if the limit was 7, they'd bring, like, 7, like, giant bags because they didn't have to fly. Whereas, like, the non-local ones had to bring, like, 7 suitcases.
Wow.
Which, you know, if you can, lucky for the queens, I guess, that just are able to get away with wearing, like, leotards. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I always forget that word, but yes, I think that's right.
I feel like you have to have, like, a good mix. You got to be like, all right, I got to put, like, my 3 train looks in these 3 suitcases, and then I got to fit, like, 15 things in this other suitcase. It's like a fucking packing puzzle.
Yeah, or you have, like, Bosco from last season where all she wore was those, like, straps, and I'm sure she had, like, 1 bag total.
So I met her at the DragCon, and she was
really?
I had her record a hello video for my mom, which my mom
that's sweet.
like loved because she loves her. Yeah.
Hi, Mom.
Okay, so that was interesting for sure. I did also, and maybe it was on one of your reviews, I'm not sure, but I did hear that on All Star 7 they didn't have any limit on luggage, which I'm sure, like, what I really want to know is when they went to these queens and said, hey, you already won, we want you to come back. I want to know, like, what their offer was for them to do that, because it definitely was not this. It definitely was not this contract. Right?
Yeah, they're not going to go up to, like, Shea Coulee and be like, you want $500 per episode?
Yeah, I feel so. I wonder, like, I really wonder if they offered to pay them more, or if they just said there's going to be, like, prize money for everything, like mini challenge prize money. We're gonna have, like, runway, like, whatever, and also no one's getting eliminated, and we'll pay for as much luggage as you want to bring. Or if they actually got paid more per episode, who knows? And
the final prize is higher, right? Isn't it like 150, 200,000?
I think it's 200. I think it's
200
this time.
Yeah.
So Jinx is gonna have a really good time spending that money, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, okay, so as an aside, I feel like we could probably give everyone a break from this contract anyway. What were your initial thoughts, like episode 1, like of the queens? Because I think it's interesting that a number of them you hadn't really seen before, at least on the show.
I hadn't seen any of them before. So yeah, it was very much first impression. I think I really underestimated Jinx. I don't know why. I think maybe she, in the kind of preview of the queens, she was like not able to show her full personality, or maybe just kind of, she's got a more complex personality, I'm finding, that you kind of get to unwrap as you learn more about her. I was initially just blown away by Shea Coulee because I think she's just fucking gorgeous, like perfect skin, perfect teeth, just like really, really stunning. And the rest, it was kind of a blur. The rest, I was like, I feel like every time I'm introduced to new queens, I need some time to unpack what's going on.
Has anyone kind of like, have you gotten this from the comments of your own video yet? Or has anyone kind of given you the lowdown on what their story arcs were on their original seasons?
No, I haven't gotten the lowdown.
Okay, so I want to share, if I can share a little bit. We'll cut it from the podcast if we don't think it's like interesting. So Jinx, it's interesting that you say you underestimated her a little bit, because that was her entire storyline on season 5. She was the quote underdog that won the crown. So she was on Alaska's season, and you saw how hard Alaska like slayed All Stars 2, right? Yeah. So it was Alaska, Detox, who was also on All Stars 2, and Roxy Andrews, who was on All Stars 2.
Okay.
And so their nickname was Rolaska Talks because they were like 3 best friends.
Yes.
And then Jinx was the other one, and Jinx ended up winning. And then it was really fascinating because when they got down to the top 4 with Katya in All Stars 2, Alaska said, "You remember it didn't turn out so well when it was the 3 of us and a lovable weirdo in our last season," because Jinx played it and won. So Jinx was the underdog. I think she's probably like 21 or 23 at that point in time.
Wow.
But when you go back and watch the season, I think she like won 2 episodes. She was in the bottom once, and she was like high, like top 3, top 4, like 6 other episodes.
Wow.
So the design episode was the only one where she was like in the bottom, because she's an actress, comedian, and apparently a very good singer. So that was interesting. And then you've probably at this point seen Shea Coulee's lip sync finale, I would assume, on YouTube for her season.
I haven't.
The Rose Petals. Okay, you'll have to watch this.
I'll have to watch that. Yeah,
watch it. She was the heavy favorite going into the finale for her season. And Trinity was in the top 4 as well. So Trinity and Shea were from the same season. And there was like kind of a surprise twist. She was the first ever season where they did the lip sync for the crown bullshit.
Oh, okay. Fascinating.
Yeah. I'm just wanting to talk about Drag Race now. We can take the rest of this offline. Okay. So should we talk about the confidentiality provision?
Yes.
Okay. So
where is that?
Where do we even start? It's paragraph number 12.
There it is.
So non-disclosure obligation. I agree not to disclose in perpetuity to any third party any information to which I have had or will have access concerning concerning the project, maybe a missing word, including without limitation the premise and title of the project. I feel like when I'm pointing out typos, it's probably just like sounds rude, but really it's just me being like, oh, they probably paid a really big law firm to write this.
Absolutely.
And like, I'm not the only person that makes mistakes. This makes me feel better.
And probably it went through multiple levels of review before it was finished if it was at a big firm. So yeah.
I think the main takeaway here is confidentiality provisions compared to even every other type of contract term are even more boring to read. So we won't do any more of that. It's essentially just saying, like, don't say anything ever for the rest of your life, or we will sue you specifically for $2 million.
Specifically. That's right.
Specifically. So do you want to talk a little bit about what liquidated damages means in contract terminology?
Okay. So the liquidated damages provision basically lays out all of the remedies that they being World of Wonder, producers, whatever, would have in the event of a breach of any part of the agreement. And sometimes it'll just say like actual damages, but sometimes, most of the time, there's going to be like a number.
Yeah.
And here they have $2 million and producers' attorneys' fees.
It's like $2 million. Why not?
And disgorgement of any money received. So like if they did an exclusive interview or something, they'd have to pay that money anyway. Yeah, it's basically all of the ways that they're going to sue you if you were to breach any part of this agreement.
Have you ever seen or do you know of like the infamous Roscoe's viewing parties?
No.
Okay, so Roscoe's is a fabulous, fabulous gay bar in Chicago.
Okay.
And they do a viewing party every week, and they put it on YouTube. So there are a lot of bars that do viewing parties. I think they're the only ones that put it on YouTube, but they always have, during a current season, they always have at least one or two queens from the current season, and then like a past queen or two on.
Oh, cool.
And then they always do a Q&A at the end, and inevitably people want to ask the nosiest questions. And they've had on some of the episodes, they've had queens like turn their mics off. And I can only imagine that this like $2 million number is like flashing in their mind as they hear these questions.
Right. I do wonder though, sometimes the queens that are on the show, are they reminded of these provisions at some point? Because I feel like when they're signing this agreement at the beginning, when you're just agreeing to like audition for the show. So I wonder if they're then sent kind of reminders like, remember, don't tell anyone, otherwise we'll sue you for $2 million.
I am positive that they do, that they have to do like an exit interview where they're like reminded of all the stuff that they can't do. Like after they like leave filming and go home, that's like gotta be part of it, right? And I also know that like, and I had this in here to chat about somewhere, I don't remember, I think we skipped it, it doesn't matter. But for all like PR gigs, any type of publicity within that like window that they have to get it approved. Because I actually asked someone to come on the podcast, and then I had to type up like a little summary of the questions I wanted to ask her on a Google Doc. And she told me that then she submitted it to production or PR, whomever, for approval. Am I expecting that to get approved? Probably not, but we'll see.
Right.
So I know that they're probably like regularly reminded of that. And I would also assume that they just assume that they basically can't do anything without approval within that time window. So you talked about in your video unconscionability. So I thought we would bring that up and discuss it. And then I also want to talk about like the practicality of what it would actually look like if someone breaches this contract. So I did, for sake of academic purposes, Google the specific rules in California, and I can read those in a minute if we want to do that. But I'll have you just kind of generally explain what unconscionability even means.
Yeah, so where a contract has been signed and one party breaches that contract for whatever reason, then you'd think the other party is going to sue them in court. And unconscionability then becomes a defense for the breaching party to use in court to say, yes, maybe I did breach these terms of this contract. However, the contract itself or that wording specifically is unconscionable for whatever reason. It could be because, and I talk about this in my video, that $2 million liquidated damages amount is incredibly high. There's no way that they could prove that they had damages even anywhere near that high from whatever breach I committed. Therefore, the $2 million is really like a punitive damages amount, which typically are frowned upon in contract issues because we're not trying to punish people. That's what criminal law is for. We're just trying to make one party whole again. So they could argue that the term is unconscionable, therefore it's not enforceable, therefore they shouldn't win this lawsuit. So it's a defense to a lawsuit.
Yeah, and I was always taught, back in my contracts class, that it was like such a high bar to try to get a court to rule that a contract was unconscionable. But I mean, this contract, certain elements of it would be a great example because the power dynamic is so severe, which is what I think you do a great job explaining, like in your video. So people should go watch the video. Go watch Bussy Queen's video as well.
Yeah, there was definitely a portion, I think the unconscionability part, at least in terms of the power dynamic, I think it would be harder to argue against, say, like this liquidated damages maybe, or other elements of it where you are entering into it as a brand new contestant saying like, I want to be on RuPaul's Drag Race. Because at that point, it feels like you want it, you want to sign up for it. You don't have to do this. No one's forcing you to do this.
Yeah.
And you did it. But then some of the provisions where it's like, once you sign up, if you want anyone to ever be your manager, like you have to ask us permission. Those provisions that are kind of like post signing on to this control of things, I feel like might have a stronger argument as to the kind of power dynamics and actual ability for one party to negotiate against the other one.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's like if you're going on a reality show, it makes a ton of sense that you're going to have like very little privacy while you're filming, right? Also that everything needs to be like super hush hush until at least until it gets on television and probably for a little while thereafter. And that they can like make you or require you to do a certain amount of like live in-person promotional activity to promote the show. It's like like you mentioned, everything after that where it's like, okay, like what are we doing here?
Arguable at least. Yeah.
Arguable. Okay. So as a practical matter, I think Bussy noted this in his video. He said that, you know, here's a few queens that have like spoken out, arguably that have probably breached confidentiality, but none of them have been sued. Technically, I don't know if we would know if they had been sued.
Right.
We probably would because lawsuits are generally public record, but we wouldn't know if they like had discussions and settlements or whatever in private and signed additional contracts. But I think essentially someone mentioned, and it may have been you, that it's not a good look. It's like not a good look to go after the people who at the end of the day are the ones responsible for like the fandom that has been created.
Right.
Like you'll have people like picketing outside of the like WoW building, Viacom, whatever, if you like go after Jinx or whomever. So as a practical matter, I don't see them, you know, suing anyone or going after anyone unless it's like pretty obvious and there's like a lot of money at stake is what I would imagine.
Right. Yeah. And I did a video where I attempted Trixie's makeup while talking about Drag Race lawsuits. So I did some digging to see like how often has World of Wonder sued queens, and I couldn't find anything. I found a lot of like former Drag Race queens then having issues with their new production company or like other people breaching World of Wonder's copyrights that aren't queens. But I will say, I think you're right. I think we wouldn't necessarily know if there was an issue. I could see a lot of maybe cease and desist letters being sent. I feel like when I was in the IP world, that's all I did was send cease and desist letters. So it's a very powerful tool to scare someone into stopping doing something. And that's not public. So I could see that being kind of a tool that they have in their toolbox.
Yeah, and also to let everyone know that's listening, like the point of this episode is like not to shit on like WoW or Viacom or anybody else. Like the thing is when they're obviously spending a lot of money to produce these shows, right? And we're all getting the beneficial enjoyment of that. When they hire attorneys to draft these contracts, generally attorneys are gonna throw everything at the wall, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
they're gonna try to cover any and all bases that they can. That's just kind of their job. And in a normal like large business to business contract, a lot of that would be negotiated. I think we can assume that negotiation's not happening. So a lot of the more wacky clauses are just staying in the contract. But I don't think there's probably not like any ill intent on, you know, the like, you know, the main power holding party to this contract, so to speak. It just is, you know, it is what it is, kind of.
Yeah, it is what it is. And I think it's probably pretty standard operating procedure. It's like what is that called? A contract of, not attrition. Is it attrition? Adhesion. An adhesion contract. It's like, take it or leave it. Here it is, where no one's forcing you, but like that's a very common practice if you're signing on for a credit card or to take a cruise or what, like you have to you sign the contract of adhesion or you don't, and then you just don't do the thing. Yeah. And that's
liability waiver at your gym, whenever you open your new MacBook and you have to click the checkbox before you can even like log on to the computer. Yeah.
Right. No one's negotiating that. No one's writing a letter to Apple being like, I take issue with these parts of that contract and I need to change that.
I had my contracts professor like did scholarly writing on those types of contracts and wanted to get like real into it during our lectures. And all of us were like, no, thanks. We're cool. We are cool. Yeah. All right, Leeja. As we start to wrap up here, let all of the lovely people know where they can follow you, if they want to be like your best friend now, how they should do that.
Mm-hmm. So my main YouTube channel is just my name, Leeja Miller. That's spelled Leeja. My Drag Race channel is a separate channel that now I'm all of a sudden blanking on the name of my own channel. So it's called the Real Life Network, because I tell everyone I'm a real life lawyer on a mission to demystify the law, blah, blah, blah. So I have Real Life Network is the name of my second YouTube channel, where I have my Drag Race podcast called Drag Me with Leeja Miller. And that Real Life Network channel is going to be kind of a catch-all for any future projects I have. So if you want to know other future things I do, go there. I'm on TikTok at Leeja the Lawyer. And then if you really want to be my best friend, Instagram is the best place to find me at Leeja Miller, because that's where I just post the more unfiltered side of my life. So those are all the spots.
That's where I send you unsolicited voice memos asking you to come on this show.
That's right.
Yes, I have. Dasha wanted to say hello before we wrap up.
Oh, hello, perfect.
Well, Leeja, thanks so much for coming on this show. I really wanted to have you come on and talk about the contract because A, I don't know who else would want to do that other than another attorney, and B, like you already did it and everyone loved it, and I was like, this sounds like a great idea. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Hi everyone, it's me, Rock'em Sock'em from the cast of season 12 of RuPaul's Drag Race. Do you need help doing your taxes? Of course you do. You're stupid, but you're pretty. You might be a drag queen and you can do dips and splits and all of that other stuff. You can grab $1, $2, but are you paying Uncle Sam? If you don't know how, you need help, and that's why you need Business of Drag. That's right, you need Business of Drag. Taxes are a drag. Tune in for help from a pro. All right, all you drag performers out there, taxes are stressful. We all know tax season. Taxes are stressful, stress causes wrinkles, and filler is not deductible. Hire us for help. You need it. You really, really do. Hey everyone at home. Ooh, there goes my titty. That is not deductible. Okay. Hey everybody, it's me, Rock'em Sock'em from the cast season. Hey everybody, it's me, Rock'em Sock'em from the cast season 12 of RuPaul's Drag Race, and I'm here to tell you that if you're stupid and pretty just like me, you might need help on your taxes, because taxes are a drag. But you need to tune in for help. Oh, motherfucker! God damn it, I got this wrong. Okay, one more time. Sorry. Hi everyone, it's me, Rock'em Sock'em from the cast season 12 of RuPaul's Drag Race. You guys, if you're like me, you're beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, stunning. People run down the street just to get a look at you. But you're also insanely stupid and not good at doing things like math or handling your money. That's why Business of Drag is here. Taxes are a drag. Tune in for help from a pro. Might I add, taxes are stressful. Stress causes wrinkles and filler is not deductible. No deductee. Hire us for help. You need it. Business of Drag! Pay your taxes. Pay your taxes. Pay your taxes. Or Uncle Slam will do a split on your throat, metaphorically speaking. Do your taxes.